Hi everyone and welcome back to the channel. In this video we're gonna talk about some basics of JavaScript, and there's a lot of JavaScript tutorials out there, but this is based on a roadmap that I have in my mind for this channel. We're gonna use what we'll learn today in addition to what we've learned HTML CSS before, and put these together and then use them for data visualization, making things that we do with data analysis look better on the web, and also share it with everyone. So JavaScript is a very popular language, and you need that if you want to do any kind of cool web development things. So make sure to watch this video, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and then turn the notification bell on. And also, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to hit the like button, and you can share it with your friends as well. So yeah, let's get started. Alrighty, so this is where we stopped when we were building our portfolio project. So if you remember, we had our index.html file and then styles.css, and we used the live server, which was one of the VS Code extensions. If you don't remember what these were, go ahead and check that video out again. I'll put links also throughout this video on this top right corner for you guys to check out the previous videos that I did on this topic. So you'll basically install live server, and once you do that, down here you should see go live, and when you click on that, it should open the like this port 5500 in the browser, in your default browser. I have Chrome here, and so you'll see this is what we built by the end of our little portfolio project. So we're gonna work with the same setup that we have index HTML and style CSS. We're gonna add a JavaScript file and then do some basic stuff with that. So in order to do that, what I'm gonna do here under my folder, the same working directory that I was, I'm going to add a file called scripts.js, and then so this is gonna be my JavaScript file, and in order to use that, we need to actually call this file in our index.html similar way that we did with the styles.css. As you can see here, I have my link to the styles.css, and we're gonna do the same with scripts.js. For the styles, we normally, almost all the time, we link the style in our head section of our HTML. For the JavaScript, on the other hand, if you remember, we did bring in some bootstrap related scripts over here, and also the forms free stuff that we did here. We will do the same just before the closing body tag over here. We're gonna link to our script file, scripts.js. So if you start typing script, it's gonna give you, if you're in VS Code, it's gonna give you this autocomplete. So we want script source, and then for the source, since everything is inside the same folder, we can just go ahead and do scripts.js. Okay, so if I save it right now, if we go back to here, let's check out our console, inspect over here, console, and actually under sources over here, you should see script.js also showing up. So we have everything loaded, and I'll show you in a a little while that there are other ways that we can make sure our script file is connected to our HTML file. So let's get started working on this JS file. Alrighty, the first step that we want to take a look at is adding comments to your file. So as a developer, you always want to make sure that you add comments to your files to make sure that the next person knows what you've done, and also for the future you, when you come back in 2 years, you know, hey, what the hell I just did here. And you'll have a hard time figuring out stuff if you don't have comments. So the way you add comments in a JS file is by just adding 2 forward slashes, or you can like start typing. For example, if I type my comment here and then do command and forward slash, it's gonna do that for me. So instead of going like at the beginning here and typing forward slash, I can just go ahead and do command forward slash in Mac and control forward slash in Windows. And that's gonna give me make that line of code a comment section. So that's how you do it. Similar thing in index, like in your HTML file. If you want to add comment, for example, you can also type and then do command and the forward slash. For HTML, it's gonna turn into this. So we have like a smaller than exclamation mark and the 2 dashes here, and then similar, just closing it without the exclamation mark. So everything in between is gonna be a comment. And we can again do the same shortcut for styles.css. So you will type something and then command and forward slash. This time it's gonna do a forward slash star and star forward slash, and everything between the 2 is going to be your comment. So we have your comment here, saving it, and then let's bring that also back, comment, and I'll share the link to this whole code in GitHub repo, the GitHub repo link in the description box below this video, so you'll have access to all this. You can get it from there. And then let's see, let's save this. And then for a script, for JS file, it's gonna be in shape of like 2 forward slashes. So that's the first step. The next thing we want to do is to log in to console. So what I mean by this is that you start basically writing your code here, and you want to know, hey, for example, you have a variable and you want to know what's the value for that variable that you have. And the easiest way is to actually write it to your console, the browser console over here. So what you use for that is console.log, and then you do your whatever you want in here. So for example, I'm gonna do like JS connected. We just do it as another way in addition to seeing the file here to make sure it's connected. If I save it, the live server is gonna auto refresh this page. So pay attention here. Once I save it, I will see the JS connected here, and if you like click on this over here, it shows you like where in the script it is called, this console.log. So back to console here, basically you can console anything that you want over here, and we'll do a little bit more in the remainder of this video. But for now, just let's keep it like that. And next thing we are gonna talk about is about defining variables and constants. So basically there are a couple ways you can define variables and constants in JavaScript, if I can spell it right. In the newer versions of JavaScript, basically it's called ES6, so you don't need to worry about that. For constants you use const, and then for variable you use let, and we'll see what the difference is. For example, if you have a number, constant number equal to 12, this is how you define that, and you're basically assigning that number, the value of 12 to this number. What happens here is that you can't change this number because it's a constant. So if you do something like number is equal to 13 and save it, JavaScript is going to tell you, hey, you're assigning to a constant variable, which is wrong. And if you've done some other languages, this is probably a concept that's familiar to you. So it's the same over here as well. So we can't reassign a value to a constant that we've defined. And again, here, to make sure that our variable actually has the value, we can do another console.log, and then we'll be like, give me the number. So instead, we don't put it in quotes or single quote or double quote, because this is our variable. And then if I save it, you'll see that I have 12 here. And once you keep adding these console.logs, you want to make sure there is a way to know what is what. You could obviously always click on this here, which is the reference to that JavaScript line, the line of code there, and see it. But you might also want to add more stuff to this console.log for clarification. So you could have done something like this: number equals, and then we separate this with a comma. So this part is gonna be like a string that will be exactly typed out, and then it will also add the number to it. So you can see number is 12. So that's how you do constant. And for variables, meaning like the values that you want to like reassign values to, you do it using let. So let's say I have another number 1 here, which is equal to 14, and again we'll do the same console.log, similar for this one. So if I save it, our initial number 1 is 14. Now I can go ahead and do, hey, number 1, I want it to be actually like number multiplied by 2. So let's go ahead and console.log this one as well. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say like final number 1 because I made a change, and you'll see it's 24, and that's what you expect. Since we had let over here, we can reassign values to that variable over here. One thing I want to mention to you guys about this console here is that this console is actually kind of like a .js file. So you can actually go ahead and type your JavaScript code here. For example, you can do, hey, I have a constant, call a, it's equal to 1. And then if I want to see the value of a, I can just type a and enter. And then I can say, like, for example, const b is equal to a multiplied by 4, well, which a is 1 right now, so it's gonna be b is gonna be 4. And in this console over here, you don't necessarily need to define like actually spell out constant. You can do like c is equal to b plus 4, and then that's gonna show you C. So C is gonna be 8. So you can do everything here. And even if I don't have these consoles over here, console.logs, if I save and refresh, you actually have access to these variables here. So you could have like type number here and it shows 12, and then number 1. This shows the the final version, which was here, 12 multiplied by 2. So you can access in this way also. But if you want to know what's happening like in the intermediate steps, you definitely want to have some console.logs, because like as you saw here, this number 1 is going to be the final value, which is 24. Yeah. So I'm gonna bring these back for now. We'll keep them, and then the next thing we're gonna talk about is targeting elements in the page. So let's get started with that. Okay, now we're gonna talk about targeting elements in the page, and what I mean by that is that it happens so many times that you need to basically, for example, target this element like this paragraph here and make some changes using JavaScript to it, like things that you can't do with CSS, for example, like changing color and those things. You can clearly do most of that in CSS. But there are things that you need to do on the fly. For example, you wanna like change the color of this button here when somebody clicks, or you want to like have some hover effects that move this image to the right or above. Those kind of things, and a lot of these things you can do in CSS, but some of them you actually have to do it kind of on the fly. So as like after the whole page is loaded and the CSS styles, everything is already applied. So that's why we use like JavaScript to like target those elements, and then we make the changes that we want to those elements. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in a few minutes. But there are generally 3 ways you can target an element. If your element has an ID, for example, let's check out this subscribe here. Yeah, so this button here has an ID. And if you remember, IDs are unique, so you can't have the same ID for different elements. So we can actually use this ID to target this element. And the way we do it is normally we assign it, for example, a constant or a variable. If we want to make changes to it, we might want to define it as let. So for example, let's say I say let subscribe button equal to, and now we define like variable. This is how we are going to store that target element. The way we do it is by typing document dot get element by ID, and as you type these, VS Code is gonna give you an autocomplete suggestion. So get element by ID and then parentheses, and as you see here, we need to add the element ID as a string here. So my element ID is right here. You can double click here and then it will select the ID and then copy and bring it over here, paste. So that's my element, and I'm storing it into like this subscribe button variable, and then I'll go ahead and also console.log so we can see what that is. So let's console.log, let's go back in console, and you can see this is basically that exact element that we had. If we go back, you see we have button, ID, type, class, and the value like the subscribe over here. And so that's how we target the element. And like I said, in a little bit we will see what we can use this for and why do we actually need to like I already explained why we need to target elements, but we will see that in action as well. And the next way to do it is using class name. And so what I'm gonna do here, I'm gonna define a constant. Let's say we are going to target this submit button down here, which was for our form. If I inspect it, you'll see that there is a btn class assigned to this. And so I'm gonna say contact submit button is equal to, again, document dot, this time I'm gonna do get element by class name, as you have probably guessed, because that was the class name over here, parentheses, and again we need a string with the class name in there. So we'll do btn, and then again I'm going to console.log this so we can see it. I'm gonna close this sidebar so we have more room here. So if I go to console over here now, what we'll see is that we actually have two HTML collection, as you can see here, and it's showing us two buttons. Now what happened here is that, as you remember, class names can be assigned to multiple elements. So this button, subscribe button up here, also had the class name btn. So if I hover over, you can see it's like highlighting this button, and then the second one here is this. So it is giving us an array of all the elements that have the class name of btn. So you need to be very careful when you do this, because like if you want to do something with this submit button only, this class name is selecting all the classes, all the elements that have the btn class. So keep that in mind. The third way to target an element is using query selector. So what it does is actually it's going to look at the class or tag or like the ID of element, and we can use a combination of these to target that element instead of just like using one ID or one class name. So the way it works is that, let's say for the subscribe button here, since we already have a let for it, that means I can reassign it. So I say subscribe button is now equal to document dot, this time we use query selector. So query selector, and now here in parentheses we have our single quote or double quote block here. But what we do here is any kind of CSS selection that we did over here, we can exactly do that over here as well. Let's see what I mean by that. For example, let's say I want to grab this work element over here. So we know it's an H3. So if I wanted to do like just, let's say, an H3 over here, because this query selector, keep in mind, it can be a class name, a tag, an ID, but the way you do it, if it's a tag, you'll just put the tag here, and by tag I mean like the HTML tag, like h3p div whatever. And so I'm targeting the h3 tag here. So right now if I do that and relog this using console.log, the last one, what you'd see is targeting actually the about here. So with query selector, it's going to target the first of that type that it finds in our page. And the first H3 element in our page was about. So we need to be more specific. And the way to be more specific is to let this query selector know that, hey, I want the H3 that's inside the section with ID of work, for example. So the way we do that, first thing we want to do is section is our tag, and then the same section has also an ID of work. So if I don't specifically say I want the section with ID of work, it might go up here and select the section with ID of about. What we do here then is to, since it's an ID, we use the hashtag sign similar to how we did it in CSS. IDs have the hashtag and the classes have dot. So I will say section hashtag work. That means the section with the ID of work, and then we add a space. And this space, what it does, it tells you now this was my parent element. Whatever I'm about to type here is gonna be a child to that element. So this H3 here is not a direct child, because you see, like, when I say parent and child, this is the parent and this is the child. And then this H3 is actually the child of this container. But you could also directly target the grandchild. If you wanted to be specific, you would be like, hey, I want a child that has the container class, and then inside that container class, I want the H3. Okay, and each of these spaces matter. This here, we didn't have a space between section and work because they were both for the same element. So my tag is section with the ID of work, but then the container is the child of that, and then this H3 is a child of the container. So we have all these spaces here. So now if I save this here, checkout console, there we go. We have work over here. So we have selected that work now. So this is very important to use this a lot in JavaScript and web development. So try to read some other like articles, watch some other videos, so you know how this works. Always you can go to this MDN Mozilla Developer Network, which is like developer.mozilla.org. And you can search for stuff over here. So for example, we talked about document here, but like, what is document? So here, like I'm saying, hey, get element by ID from the document. You can like look and see what the document is. Basically everything in our HTML page is a part of our document, so you can learn more there. And there is other stuff that you see here. You can like search here, or just like go directly search in Google. What I'm trying to tell you guys here right now are the things that we will need for our future videos. So just like sticking to those things, and as we work with JavaScript and other stuff later on, we'll learn more complicated stuff as well. This is just for us to get started. So the next thing we're going to talk about is the functions in JavaScript. And functions are basically blocks of code that you can call inside your code to do specific stuff. If you want to think about it as some like real life examples, for example, if I have a microwave and I want to add 30 seconds to the time that I have, you like hit that button and then it adds 30 seconds to the current time that your microwave's been running. So that's like some kind of function that you'll tell the microwave to do. Microwave like kind of knows that 30-second button that you hit means, hey, whatever current time is left, add 30 seconds to that. And so just like a quick example of that, if you work with other programming languages, you know what functions are, and so this is how we're going to define them in JavaScript. So basically you use the function keyword and then you give it a name. Now let's say we want to add 20 to whatever number that we have. So I'm defining this as add 20 and then parentheses and then curly braces or brackets. And then here we like do whatever we want to do inside our function. So for example, here I want to actually, let's say, increase this number 1 by 20. And there is an easy way to do this. Instead of saying number 1 is equal to number 1 plus 20, which is totally fine, we can also do number 1 plus equal 20, which will do the same, adds 20 to number 1, whatever the value it has right now. So let's go ahead and also console.log my number 1 here, so we see what happens. Now let's go back to our page over here. Make sure I've restarted it. What you see here, console.log number 1. Remember this final number 1, we had 24. And then again here you're seeing 24, but you know you added 20 to it. Why is it still 24? The reason is because when you define a function, you also need to call that function so that like this program knows that, hey, you want to use that function. Just defining a function is not enough. So you have to go ahead and say, hey, add 20 here. That's how you call the function. Add 20. Now if you do that, now the 20 will be added. And when you use the function definition like this over here, so like the function keyword, a name, and then parentheses and brackets, doesn't matter where you call this. So you can call this after you define the function or before, but just keep in mind that where you call it matters. So if I call it after this console.log, it's still 24. If I move this console.log below the calling to function, now it's gonna be 44. So that matters. So make sure when you want to add this, make sure to like call the function and then do the rest of your thing. But in terms of, hey, which one needs to be first, doesn't matter as long as you use this function keyword to define your function over here like this. So just so that I keep it close to each other, keep them close to each other, I just move it over here so we have that and everything is working fine right now. So we have also that added here. You could go ahead and also actually do number 1 here and it should show you 44. So as we saw before. In JavaScript and some other languages, we do have a concept of callbacks, and to explain them, I guess at this point, I would like to use event listeners and then like callbacks inside them to explain the concept. So first I want to talk to you guys about event listeners. So any interaction that you do in this page, things like clicking on something or like, I don't know, typing stuff over here, like selecting this form, again, hovering over this button, or like clicking anywhere in the document, doesn't necessarily have to be something that is clickable. That's an event that's happening on this page. So for example, let's go check out Netflix's website. This is like their website. Like this hovering over this one, you see like there is a little bit of change of opacity of that red color. That's an event. That's a mouse over event. And then when you like hover, like a move outside, that's like a mouse out event. So mouse over, mouse out. If you like click on this, it's another event. If you like, for example, have this English and Spanish selection here, this is like a change event. You're changing the selection here. So that's one thing. Then like, let's say here, like you have this frequently asked questions, kind of like accordion things that we call them. This is all like events, like it's a click event on this guy over here. And these are the things that you can easily handle with JavaScript. One of the reasons that we want to be able to target elements, as we did that over here in section 3, is because one of the reasons is we want to handle some of these events on specific elements. For example, I want to target this like element over here and then listen to a click event on this, and then once a click happens, I'll do something, which in this case is open up the answer to this question. The way we do it is when we have our element defined over here, we have targeted it, we can call it, let's say, subscribe button, and then we use the add event listener function, and then parentheses. First thing we need to do is to define what event we want to listen to, and once I, as you see here, click this, type the single quotes, you can see a bunch of events here. What we want right now is the click event. So here, right here, click. And then now we come to the concept of callbacks. So over here, I'm going to define a function, and what it is an anonymous function, so we don't have any name for it. What it does is it's saying, hey, once I click on this subscribe button, do whatever's inside my function, in simple words. So this is how we do it. So almost every time when you have something like this, you want to console.log just a simple click happened or something like that to make sure that, hey, this is actually picking up the click event. So if I go back to over here and then save this, so this subscribe button is actually, we have reassigned it to the work h3 over here. So in fact, if I click on this right now, we should see that click happen, and you see it here. So I'm clicking, but I was gonna target this one, doesn't matter. I could have actually, like, let's change this to like a const. We call this work, and then here also work. Now my subscribe button, the latest assignment is to that my form button, which was this subscribe over here. So if I save it, Now if I click on this, it's gonna show me click happened. So it is working. And then this is not like what you want eventually. Of course you want to do something else with this, and we're gonna come back to this after I talk about this last section over here, which is styling our elements over here using JavaScript. Most of the time we use CSS file to style our elements in the document in our web page, but there are times that you might want to style your elements using JavaScript, and there is an easy way to do that. All you need to do is to target your element, which we know how to do that using like document, query selector, or anything you want. And then let's say we want to target this subscribe button again. So what I'm gonna do is subscribe button dot style, and then dot whatever style that you wanna do it, and like make the change to. So there is a big list of them as pop-up, you can see here. One thing to keep in mind is that if, for example, you have a border radius which is separated by a dash, in JavaScript it's going to be camel cased, so border radius like this. So first one will have a lowercase border b here, and then the second word will have uppercase, so basically it's capitalized. So that's how you do it. But for now here, let's say I want to change the color, the background color of this. So I can do background equal to as easy as saying, hey, I want it to be red. If I save it, that's gonna be red. Now this is something you obviously would have done in the style.css, but the main reason we want to do this is because we actually might want to do this inside an event, like a click or hover event. And what I mean by that is, let's say when I click on the subscribe button, I want to change the color of the text over here. So I'll say subscribe button dot style dot color, which is the text color, is equal to white. And this is happening when I click on that. So if I save it, now it's red because of this here. If I click, the background is red. If I click on this, the text is gonna be white over here. So you can change things on the fly here. Or you can do a lot of other things, like if I wanted to, for example, let's say I wanted to change the margin left of this element to, let's say, 10 pixel when I click on it. So I have it. When I click on it, you saw like it moved a little bit. Let's see it again. Pay attention here. The margin changed, and if you inspect the element, you'll see that my button now has a margin left of 10. If I refresh, it didn't have anything. Background is red, but when I click, the color is white now, and the margin left is 10, which is exactly what we had here. So this is doing stuff kind of like on the fly. And there are more complicated things that you normally can't do with CSS, and so you do them here with JavaScript. Some of these things you could have done with CSS, like hover effect. Mostly you can do a lot of things on CSS, but click events and things like that, you might want to take care of all those things in your JavaScript code. Okay, so that's the basics of JavaScript that I had in mind to talk to you guys. Next thing is about the challenge that I want you guys to think about, and let's see what that challenge is. Alrighty, let's talk about our challenge. So I have it spelled out here. So what we're trying to do here is to actually click on this nav bar, and then when you click on it, the first click, I wanted to change the color of like my name or your name, whatever, to let's say blue. And then on the next click, I wanted to change to white, back to white. And then like as you click, every other time it goes from like blue to white and white to blue. So that's one thing I want you to work on, and go in the Late Night Coders Club in the community and try to join there. What I want you guys to do is to go to latenightcoders.club/community here, and then over here you can join the community if you like. Select any of these, either of these plans, and then once you join inside the community, you'll basically see this these topics over here. And what I want you to do is to go inside the new developers, make sure to follow it, and then over here I'll have a post that will refer to this challenge for this video, and then you can go there and basically talk about your answer. And if you have any questions, any difficulties, you can go there and ask questions. I'm normally available there, and there's other fellow developers, so I'm sure they will be helping you. So make sure to do it, take advantage of it. It's for free, and this is just a community that I'm trying to build for all of us to be able to work with each other, collaborate, and then solve problems and help each other basically. So make sure to go and check that out, and thanks a lot for watching this video, and I look forward to connecting with you all in the community. And don't forget to also subscribe to the channel, because I will be sharing more videos in the near future. And if you turn the notification bell on, you will be notified, so do that as well. And don't forget to like this video if you enjoyed it. Thanks a lot, and talk to you guys later.